that's a nice cost save value proposition. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to bring projects and programs to show the value that they normally, because normally when you do a program or a project in an enterprise, you're doing a business case. I'm gonna run this project because we're going to save money, or we're going to reduce the headcount, or whatever it is. Well, now run the initiative, we'll measure it, and we'll say, yeah, you did actually get that. Or actually you said it was going to be 2 people, but actually you've only saved 1. Oh, why is that? Because the numbers were wrong.
This is Get Unstuck Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs who prioritize their life first, business second. I'm Mudita Panmuk, your host, who dedicates my life to designing and building a business that supports lifestyle. We will learn together from entrepreneurs around the world how they overcome their life challenges, their business obstacles, and yet still get unstuck from the hamster wheel of burying themselves into their business. Because time is the #1 commodity in the world that you cannot get back once it's gone. So let's shorten the learning curve and see how can we prioritize better. Let's get unstuck. 1. Hi, Get Unstuck Nation. Our guests today bring more than 20 years of experience in digital transformation and workspace solutions. Ryan Purvis, CEO and founder of Valuu Workspace, who is known by simplifying complex technical concepts. So this episode, we are going to talk about productivity, project management, work-life balance, all those good stuff. And without further ado, please welcome Ryan to Get Unstuck Podcast today. Hi, Ryan. How are you doing?
Very good news. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I just signed up to Valuu Workspace and I'm like, wow, spot on. I really like the dashboard. I really like the whole user experience just after I sign up.
That's good to hear. I mean, that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to provide not necessarily always a wow experience, but someone that walks in and goes, I know exactly what I need to do here, and it's simple for me to use it.
Yeah, that's exactly on my mind. I know exactly what to click. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Before we get there though, how did you start this long time entrepreneurial journey though?
I think it goes back to my childhood really. I mean, my parents were entrepreneurial people. My mom ran a business. My dad, he, as much as he worked a corporate job, was always doing things to solve problems. And I think the combination of the two led me down this route of trying to solve my problems or my friends' problems and trying to make things commercially viable. Because I think that's what business is. You're trying to solve a problem that makes you money so you can solve more problems. And profit is the byproduct of that. So that's where it started. I started off in the coding world as a kid. My dad had a computer, and I had an old XT that I learned how to use. I learned how to program and wrote some software as a 12-year-old. And I always had an affinity for technology, which led me down the route of becoming a programmer to begin with, and then moving on into different areas of business.
So from programmer until become the software owner, how that's paved the way to what inspired you to start that?
Well, funny enough, I traveled a lot. So my dad worked for an airline, and I used to go to Hong Kong a lot, and Bangkok, and those sorts of countries. And because they were technology countries, we used to go to all the sort of markets. Hong Kong would be Mongkok or Shim Sha Tsui. In Bangkok would be Panta Plaza, and we get access to a lot of software and a lot of books that we weren't getting in South Africa. And I used to use that as an opportunity to learn. I've always had a thing about knowledge, and by buying those books, and I read a lot of business books as a kid, and a lot of sort of deep technical books. It started marrying into a situation where people would come to me because they knew I was reading up on this stuff. This is prior to the internet being available. And asking me to say, I want to build a website. I've never heard about a website. What is a website? And I'd have read a PHP book, and go, oh, well, yeah, you build using PHP. And, oh, well, I don't really want to know the theory. Can you actually build the website for me? So I'd go build the website, and I would learn the hard way. And not just me on my own. I'd have friends. You obviously start surrounding yourself with people that are similar to you. So I used to have friends that were similar, they had the skills I didn't have, like a graphic designer or a much more infrastructure person. And we would build a business out of that naturally, because we were creating, solving people's problems, and people were telling other people that we were the guys to build a website for them. And in those days, there weren't many people that would build websites. I mean, e-commerce didn't exist. So, a lot of these concepts we take for granted today didn't exist. So that kind of has been the journey, is always been around and being receptive to other people's problems and always trying to solve them, and using technology to solve them. And value has come out of that, because even in those days, people were going to spend money with you. They'd want to know that what they were getting was worth the investment. The return on value. And I didn't call it value then. Return on investment is what I used to call it. But the problem with return on investment is you're not always giving someone tangible money back. If you go and buy a share in a business, following Warren Buffett's methodology, for example, of value-based buying, that share will have value, and you can sell the share at some point. The problem with giving return on value is it might be something that isn't actually a sellable thing per se. I sort of look at the four things for value. It's risk reduction, it's cost saving, it's revenue growth, and it's productivity gain. Two of those you can't actually get tangible numbers for unless something actually happens. So if a risk actually occurs, my best example would be a ransomware scenario. If ransomware actually does attack your business and they do actually lock you out, you can shut your whole business down. So the value of that risk is the turnover of your business. And that happened to like Maersk many years ago. They had to run everything on pen and paper again. It cost them about $200 million to recover. If you look at productivity gain, I can improve your productivity in your business, or we can, using our approaches. That makes your people more efficient, more effective. So that should improve your revenue. That should reduce your time to market, for example. But to actually say it's worth 100 million, we can calculate the cost of the people and reducing their risk, but it's not going to be a direct increase in your bank account. So return on value is a much easier word to use. It's a lot more flexible, but people get it. And one of the things about consulting around value is trying to determine what is value. What is the value to this person? So the problem is X. What is the value that we're going to recover?
What's the value for you that inspire you to make Valuu Workspace?
Well, it goes back to I like the problem. I like solving the problem. And what I found over the years, and this is how we ended up building the product, is I was following the same methodology over and over again. And that's where OKRs came from. When I first started, OKRs didn't exist as a concept, but it was always a goal. Like, if this is your goal, how do you get there? And what are the steps? And that's so when we built the first version of Value, it was just a big calculator, and sort of a business case product. And what I realized pretty clearly in the first couple pilot customers is that you needed some way to measure the work that was going with the calculator. And OKRs is a pretty easy concept to explain, and most people get it. And in fact, whether you call it goals or objectives, it's the same thing. And whether you call it milestones or key results, it's the same thing. And everyone understands tasks. But the real value out of it is we are benchmarking all the time. And when you change your value, your key thing that you're measuring, when that changes, you want to know what work caused that to change. So if you're doing an adoption for a piece of software that you sold and you're following our methodology, and you see adoption go from 30% to 50%, did you do something to cause that change? That could be organic. It could be a case of that the people are now getting used to using the software, or they've been forced to use it because they needed to finish their business problem. So you'll see adoption there. Or you've done some campaigning and you've done some training, and people are starting to use the software because now you're starting to empower them to use the software. In the same way, it's degrading. Why is your software adoption degrading? Well, because someone's, you've released new versions of the software, it's become more complicated. So if you look at or more unusable, if you look at Microsoft with Word, every time Microsoft releases a new version of Word, and you specifically saw this between 2010, 2012, 2016, and latest version, they kept changing the interface, which means every time a user gets a new version of Word, they're going, but why'd you change it? I used to use this. I liked it where it was. The button to do this thing is gone now, to move somewhere else. Same as Outlook. Now, there's nothing wrong with improving and having a new version. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But when you're building software and your product, and that's why the product management sort of skill set or role has become more and more important, is every time you release new functionality and you're trying to improve your product, you have to look at the value of deploying that piece of functionality. It can't just be metric driven. It also has to be quantitative and qualitative. You've got to have the qualitative piece as well, which is to ask the users, did this work for you? And balance out the priorities all the time. to how you change. So values come from that, in the sense of every time we have these conversations, what is the value? I love to have that conversation. And then what's the plan to execute on that value? And what's the sequence? What's the order of things to get the maximum amount of value? And what does that maximum value look like? Is it more money you've saved? Is it more risk reduction? Is it more adoption or more productivity? So long round to your question, but hopefully it answers it.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking along. That's like a lot of light bulb on my mind right now. It leads to one of the things that we spoke about before offline about when we onboard a new software. That's exactly what you just mentioned. And then employees or the team members, they're not really use the software. For example, the project management in particular, that they're not sure that it's really helping them, like as a previous like to-do list chart or something, how it's actually be more effective using the type of tracking OKR stuff.
So can you repeat the question?
Like, just in case that no one ever used project management software before, because someone has never used it before, someone that listened to this podcast. There are two types of our audience here. So there could be those aspiring entrepreneurs who still like doing side hustle, and those that are already like in the hamster wheel. Thinking about if they are still like solopreneur that's still like kicking things off, but like trying to keep all the project at hand, but they don't know whether it's gonna work for them or not. Let's say, how can they start developing the like project management software, like at least Valuu Workspace?
Yeah, well, I mean, it comes back to this approach that we have. So you've got to be very consultative, and if it's a solopreneur or it's a team, I guess if you're a solopreneur, you need to find someone to talk to about it. If you've got a small team, you need to talk to your team, and you need to be consulting with yourself or as a team, going, what are we trying to achieve here? What is the goal? What is our North Star vision? And the way we've designed the product is around workspaces. So workspace is a container for your initiative. And you're going to have one major thing that you need to focus on. Is it increasing revenue? If you're a small business, you need to increase revenue. How do you increase revenue? You add more customers. How do you add more customers? Well, you need to do marketing. You need to get referrals from other customers. You need to go and cold call or run marketing campaigns. So each of those things, you're going to decide where you're going to spend your energy. So this is why we prioritize and we sequence. So for us in the workspace, we'll identify what those objectives are. And I mean, you can do that outside of the system to begin with, and start working out what is if let's just use an example, a small business trying to grow, and you need to go and add customers. How are you going to go to add your customers? Well, if you look at if you're product led, if you're building a product like we have, the product should help you sell itself. If you are sales led, then you are looking to do business development in a typical way, which would be to market, to do outreach, to try and book demos in. If you're doing product led, you're looking to have demos that are pre-canned and recorded like a webinar that someone can go and look at. So depending on which strategy you take, and let's take product led just as a strategy, you would set out that your objective is to increase your customer footprint. So you need to increase number of leads. And not necessarily leads that are sales driven, but leads that are people looking at a recording of your product and signing up to it on their own, because you don't necessarily want to have a sales team following up. You could have a sales team follow up later on, but like you went and looked at our product today, you could sign up straight away and go into the product. And this is where you have the balance between a freemium product, where you have some free access for someone to use it and test it out. And then when they reach a point that they're willing to pay for it, either they've reached the limit of the free part and they need to go up to the paid version to use it, like HubSpot does, or we do, or anyone, or you're going to have not a capability limit, but you have a time limit. Now, your objective to increase revenue can be broken up to sub key milestones. So you need to have a sign-up process. You need to have a mailing list of people. So, I would even break some of these up into separate objectives, which you could treat as separate workspaces. So you can have a marketing workspace, you can have a product workspace. And these roll up together into the company workspace, where you can see all your objectives line up together. And the idea here is that you're breaking down these objectives into key steps of what you're trying to achieve. So if we go back to the product and we say, okay, we need to have onboarding, the way we do onboarding is you can invite other people into your workspace. And we're giving, I think it's 5 users now for free. So you can have one workspace for free for 5 users. every person that gets invited to the workspace, we check if they already have a workspace or not in their personal capacity. If they don't, we give them one. So we're going down the route of a expanding sprawl of workspaces for all these users, because we want people using the tool. And one of the reasons why we went this route is I didn't want to penalize a company for having too many users use the tool. So once you go past 5 users, yes, you now have to start paying, but then you're paying per workspace. So you can have as many users as you like, because I want there to be users using the tool. Now, as you break down your objectives and your key results, so we've got the onboarding process. The onboarding process will have tasks to go and build it. So our developer will have to go and build some stuff that does the onboarding process. You're starting to measure that against your plan. So you might have to, so you're, a good OKR or good objective will have a timeline and a number. So we want to, improve our onboarding process by the end of this month. We want to have 2 or 3 scenarios for onboarding, and that'll be broken down into key results. If we did a sales-led approach, we want to add 10 customers per month, for example. We would then we would do the ratios and say, 3% of all contacts lead to a qualified lead, and of that 3%, another 3% leads to a deal. So you'd reverse multiply that out, and you'd get to, let's say, 1,000 contacts a month that you have to do. So you take 1,000 contacts. So these are your key results now. So I need to have my salesperson reach out to 1,000 people a month. How many is that per day? Well, that's roughly 35 contacts a day. And hopefully out of that, we'll get that. And what we're trying to get them into then is a sales process where we will have a demo and the rest. So these things are things that we break down as key results in our objective to say, if you're going to do 1,000 contacts a month, you need to have a list of people to talk to. You need to have a sales process you're going to follow. You need to have a demo script that you're going to show. And you need to have follow-up process after that. So you have to go map these things out. So this is how I would use the tool. In fact, this is exactly how we use the tool internally. Our guys have workspaces for the different things, and we break down the objectives, the key results to that. And it's important to have the grouping of a goal with the key steps, so that you can see visibly where you're going to be working. And then what we do in our process is we sequence them in the order of things that need to happen first, second, third, fourth, and show the overlaps between them, so that you're not going to go and start talking to 1,000 people if you haven't got a sales process necessarily worked out to some extent. Okay, how do I qualify? How do I know that this person has budget? How do I know this person is the decision maker? You can just go reach out to a whole bunch of people, and it can be a waste of your time and their time, which is important too. So that's one way to look at it. And then we have measures we'd look at. So go back to the sales-led approach. Okay, we want to talk to 1,000 people. So we would track the number of contacts per day leading up to that goal of 1,000. Now, the thing that we do as a sort of counterintuitive thing is we don't look for 10 yeses. We look for 1,000 nos. Because if we're hitting 1,000 people, we should get some yeses out of that. But you can be demotivated if everyone says no and you're expecting yes. So it's kind of one of those reverse psychology things that if you get used to the no's, and we use the no's as a self-learning mechanism. So if someone says, "Oh, it's too expensive," oh, but why is it too expensive? Well, if you look at Monday, or you look at one of these other tools, they charge $12 a user, and that's cheaper. I said, yeah, but once you get to 10 users, then it's much more expensive than us, because we don't charge you per user. And I've had this with Notion, and I love Notion as a tool. But if I have to invite 40 people to Notion, I'm looking at $1,000 a month to use the tool. But in our tool, the price would stay closer to 300. We have longevity there. And this is the other thing about the value proposition for me with the tool, is I couldn't find a tool that, as we got bigger, allowed us to get bigger without penalizing us. So we can get bigger, and we can allow people to get bigger. But they're paying per workspace. And as they take on more workspaces, that gets cheaper to a point that it gets to the lowest price. But they can use the tool. And my vision behind this is that we'll never get to expensive to the point that a customer go, it's too expensive for the value that I get. They'll always go, I get so much value for what I pay, I'll never cancel, because it's got to be that relationship. And we also, the way we've approached it is we're trying to empower consulting firms or people that have knowledge, experts, to reuse their knowledge. And they can still go and sell their consulting, but they can, because we provide templates, they can get to the value quicker with their customers, because the customer's not starting from zero every time. they'll walk in and see a whole bunch of templates in a domain, and let's say it's information security or end user experience or one of those. They'll see a whole bunch of pre-built templates that consultants put together, and they can reuse it with all their customers. So yeah, I was a customer for 10 years. Nothing irritated me more than a supplier who rocks up and goes, oh, we're going to start from scratch and we're going to charge you for a month while we learn how to use your business. Yeah, but you're experts. I brought you in because you're experts. So they come in with the templates. Yes, they're templates, but you can craft the template to fit the customer.
Personalized. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I hear you. So you have planned to like certify like expert something, like implementer, something like that?
Well, yeah. We will have people that use our tool, but actually, the person what we're trying to get here is that if you're a consulting business, whether you're a one-person business or you're a 500,000 people business, like an Ernst & Young or one of those guys, Kyndryl, you'll have knowledge that you'll have in your experts. You'll have experts on information security or whatever it is. If you package that up as reusable content that your customer can see that you've got, you're still going to tailor it in the engagement with the customer, but the customer feels like they're getting value from day one. And if you look at the SaaS world, software as a service, one of the biggest differences with software as a service versus the original proprietary software you buy a license and then you pay maintenance on, is a SaaS customer can cancel any time. So their expectation is I should be getting value all the time. And the only reason they don't cancel quickly is because it's more difficult to move out of that system into another system. So if I look at like CRM, for example, it's once you're in a CRM and it starts getting wired into all your other systems, to move, say, from Salesforce to HubSpot, it's a bit of a pain. So it's a project.
Yeah.
But if the cost is high, if you're paying, and I'm using made up numbers now, let's say you're paying $10,000 a month to be on Salesforce, and you can move to HubSpot for $8,000. You're going to do that cost balance. It's going to cost. It's a $2,000 difference to save the money to move to HubSpot, but your effort to move might be 10,000.
Yeah.
So your return on value is 10 months down the road. No, 5 months down the road, which may not be worth the effort for what you're spending. But over a couple of years, over 5 years, it might be worth it. And that's what we try and do, is we try and turn these conversations from being opinionated into empirical. So what are the actual numbers? How do you go and take that? And that's a pretty easy example. You're spending 10,000 a month with Salesforce, made up number, 120,000, or you can spend 96,000 a year with HubSpot. Now, as you get to a year, that's 30,000. That becomes a tangible number now. That's a good. That's potentially an employee or 2 employees, depending on where you're paying for them. So the return on value may become quite obvious in that context. That's a nice cost save value proposition, and that's really what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to bring projects and programs to show the value that they normally, because normally when you do a program or a project in an enterprise, you're doing a business case. I'm going to run this project because we're going to save money, or we're going to reduce the headcount, or whatever it is. Well, now run the initiative. We'll measure it, and we'll say, yeah, you did actually get that. Or actually, you said it was going to be 2 people, but actually you've only saved 1. Oh, why is that? Because the numbers were wrong. We estimated the business case on this, but we've actually done the tangible thing, and it's actually slightly less. But at least so you can improve your project for the next time. What happens a lot is these projects run and no one ever learns anything, and they obfuscate the results, and nobody gets in trouble.
What about the employee engagement part? Do you have that built in within the workspace?
When you say employee engagement, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like check in. I'm just thinking about OKR, like more than a part of the project management. Do you have like anything regarding to like checking in, like feedback loop?
Well, feedback loops are very important in the system. There's a few things that I would probably not want to talk about right now that we're building in the product. But the short answer is yes, we will. Not right now. There's also some stuff that we're doing where we've built the product, I want to say the old way, and the more modern way is obviously to use more AI involved in the product. So that's some of the stuff we're doing. I'm trying to, with the guys, we're trying to reduce the amount of manual stuff that a worker has to do. And one of the first bits of feedback we got is nobody wants to go and update their tasks. And we're working on a clever way to solve that.
It's just funny. Like, so I use Asana. One of the things that I have to upgrade Asana is because I need to use their automation. Because the basic things, there is no automation included. So the reason why I have to pay them is because I need to use automation. So that's crazy already. Like, the reason is so crazy. But that's the only reason why I use the paid version, to be very honest.
Yeah, and it's a funny world we live in. People get used to so many things being given for free.
I know.
When they have to pay for something, they're like, oh, why'd I have to pay for this? But if I look at and I haven't used Asana in a long time, but if I look at Notion, we were using the AI in Notion for a long time, and it was actually really useful. But when it comes to paying $350 or $400 a month that we were paying for it, I just didn't feel it was that valuable.
Yeah, I agree as well. Like, take up as well.
Yeah, so it's a tough thing, and one of the reasons that again, building my own tool is I really wanted to make that value equation a no-brainer. And I want to, when I engage with clients and we have conversations, when we talk about the projects they're going to run using our methodology, or it doesn't even have to be in our tool, I want the initiatives to be no-brainers as well. So you need to run this project because it's a no-brainer. Okay, it's a regulatory thing. You have no choice. You need to be compliant for whatever government's requirement, or you need to make sure your information security stuff is up to scratch. So that's also a no-brainer if you're going to go down the route of an ISO 27K or something like that. But you're not going to go and spend £100,000 or $100,000 to do an ISO 27K project if your turnover is only £100,000 or $100,000, and that's not the cost of doing the certification. But there's a timing thing. So sometimes we'll sit in those meetings and it's a brain dump of all the things they want to do, and you're putting them in the order of high value, easy to do, versus high value, but give it some time. It's not the right time for you. So your organizational need, your user need, and your complexity all comes together to give you this prioritization matrix, which we call the value quadrant. So top left corner is high value, easy to do, or less complexity. And that's where you focus your time. And then even inside there's sequencing of things to say, okay, do this first because you need this done before this thing. And that's often the conversation I have with customers is they either have the data, they either have the people, but they're not sure what to do or when to do it. So we're answering that question. And then there's also the what if. What if I don't do this? What's the impact? Well, if you don't go and roll out a ransomware protection initiative and you get hit by ransomware, that's your whole business gone. Or you're going to pay the ransom.
It seems like you have to consult them on the OKR, like the whole plan of like the workflow thing as well, because that's the skeleton of how this going to work, like how they mine.
Well, like I say, using OKRs, it's a framework, and sometimes it does get, you're right, as an education. People get hung up on I need to learn OKRs before I can use the tool. No, you just need to understand what a goal is, and everyone knows what a goal is. There's that acronym SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, time, and I can't remember what the R stands for. So we've had these things in our lives already, and often the conversation with the customer is, well, what would make you successful? Just tell me that, like, what makes you successful, and then you'll get a range of things, and then it's about organizing those things and unpacking them and asking. There's various techniques. There's the 5 whys. So why would that make you successful, and why haven't you done this already? What's stopping you from doing that? You can break these things down, and once you start breaking these things down and capturing them and reflecting them back, often you're reflecting them back as a consultant. They already know the answer most of the time. They just haven't had somebody. They haven't had the headspace, or they haven't had somebody coach them or talk to them and actually challenge them on their thinking. Then you can put it into the tool, and the tool really is there to help you execute. So the original tagline was plan, track, deliver. I actually changed that to plan, track, execute, because that's really the important thing, is executing on these objectives and achieving them. And the realization of the benefit may not be positive all the time, it might be negative. You might have said, oh, this was an initiative, we're going to make $100,000 out of it. Well, actually, you lost $50,000 because you didn't take into account the cost of the resources, or you went and acquired a business and you didn't take into account the due diligence requirements, and you end up with a whole bunch of licenses that you didn't pay for and you had to pay for, which I've seen. So the tool that we're building, and I say we're building it because it's always been improved, is multifaceted. You can apply to any scenario almost, which is a challenge for us because, I can sit in many meetings going, oh, that's a great idea, we should do that. So OKRs is great because you can apply it to anything and we can measure anything. But it's really those experts that have become experts through experience that we want to use the platform.
Yeah, there are too many requests, I bet. Because what I love is that once I log in, I see the vision board. The dashboard is all vision. I'm not even seeing the task list yet, though. I see what's going on already. And I know then what I need to take a look to solve the problem that I see on the dashboard. I love about it. That's my first impression, really.
Great. Yeah, and vision is a very important thing. I think we've become very tactile or tactical in the way that a lot of businesses run, and that's usually driven by share price and that kind of stuff. It's so focused on what are you going to do today, tomorrow, but often you need that big picture. In fact, one of the conversations I was having today with a customer is you're involved in a complex ecosystem of other teams doing other things, and you all need to be aligned to some extent, or at least they need to know that you're doing some stuff so they don't duplicate what you're doing. And having that vision, we want to have a strong end user experience for our end users, or we want to reduce the reactiveness to support tickets. You need to have a working group, and you need to all agree on what those objectives are and how do you achieve it. And then you can divvy up the responsibilities and the accountabilities as well. So it doesn't become a competition, but becomes a cohesive unit, all trying to deliver the same thing in a virtual way. You may not be in the same teams, but you're networking together in a nice way to work together.
May I ask, if you use, because you are using Valuu Workspace for management, every projects, right? But what is it that is your communication software that you're using for internal company?
Well, we use Microsoft Teams primarily and WhatsApp.
Does it use Outlook? Okay.
Oh, Outlook. I mean, yeah, email is obviously there. But one of the things we're striving for is that we actually are. I don't really want to build an instant messaging capability into our tool yet. Maybe we'll get there at some point. But what I'm trying to get our guys, and we're developing this now, is that the tool is the as I said, the expert system, but it's also the center of the truth. So we've got truth?
What does that mean?
Yeah. So I don't want to go and have to dig through a whole lot of messages in Slack or on Teams or in Outlook to find out what's going on with our project. I want to log into our tool and I want to see what's going on, and that should be the most up-to-date place. And we run our own stuff through our own tool, so that's where I go and look first. And then if I have a question, what's coming now is I want to be able to ask the question in our tool and get the answer there. So I'm keeping it cohesive. Now, in a federated world that we live in, you have people on Teams, you have people on Slack, you have email, etc. You have to be able to talk to those things, and that's why I said I don't want to go and build our own IM tool to talk to those things. But what I'm trying to do is reduce the amount of places to go look for information. I just want it to be in one place, and that's what we're trying to solve now with some of our new stuff.
Yeah, because that is a lot of distraction there to find, and a lot of time spending over there. Okay, I'm going to keep tracking on your development. I'm excited that's why I asked this question, because I know, at least myself, Control F doesn't work every time.
Yeah, and we look for feedback. I mean, one of the things that we ask for all the time, and one of the reasons I increased the free users from 3 to 5 is I want people using it every day to give us feedback so that we can improve it and find out what people do. When I used to do a lot of business process re-engineering consulting, I used to spend a lot of time with people working in the day-to-day job and seeing how they went around the process. How did they skip steps? How did they cut corners? How did they avoid using a certain tool? Why did they avoid using a certain tool? Because they were doing that to make themselves more efficient, and the tool was making them less efficient. And that's what, you need feedback. You need those feedback loops to try capture that information.
Yeah, this is like study another master or even PhD. No, PhD because you are building a new things, innovative. Oh my gosh, I know. But seems like you enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I love it.
So in case anyone to like check out the Valuu Workspace or follow you, actually, where can they reach out to you then?
So value.ai is our website. And from there, you can get to the product, which is value.work. And value is spelled VALW, UU, not W as in for whiskey. It's uniform. And they can get me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. So Ryan Purvis on LinkedIn. And if they want to get a demo or they want to run through the product with us or just sign up, they can do that at app.value, VALUU.work. And they can just sign up there for free.
So I will make sure that all the links that Ryan just mentioned will be put somewhere here in the description as well as in the show notes. So I hope everyone gets your brains knocked because I have a lot of light bulbs over here. Thank you so much, Ryan, to sharing this awesome insight about project management today. And I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
I hope this episode inspires you wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey so that you can have your business that supports your lifestyle. Get a show note at getunstuckmethod.com/podcast. Review what we have learned together today and start implementing right now. See it by yourself. The result of your consistent action are worth it. You deserve the freedom to enjoy your life. Until the next episode, let's get unstuck.